Hi guys, so today I thought I'd make a video about my study habits in college, or my study routine, or how to study in college, or how to study to get A's in college. All of those titles would be appropriate, I think. On average, I got a lot of questions about how I study in college and how I get and maintain good grades, and so I thought I'd share most of what I do with you guys so you can get an overall idea of how to study right to do well in college. Disclaimer first, these are my personal study habits. This is what I do. This is how I feel like I learn a lot, how it applies to you, your study habits, how you learn the subjects you're taking, what school you're in, what level of school you're in. It's all gonna make a tremendous difference. So don't think that if I do this, it's gonna work perfectly for you as well, as you need to adapt it to how you learn, what you're doing, things like that. So the first thing I would say, especially for college, is try to estimate how much time you should spend studying. The general guideline is that for every hour in class you should spend 2 hours studying outside class, and I think that's a very good pinpointer to how much work and effort you should put into the subject. The school I go to, the number of credits line up with how many hours you spend, so if it's a 400 level class, it's 4 hours of teaching or lecture, so then I should spend 8 hours outside lecture to make sure I keep on top of that class. What I will say though is that if you take into account the homework and the different tasks and assignments, this makes a lot of sense. So far what I've experienced is that if you have, for instance, only 1 hour worth of homework every week, there's still a lot of other work you should do for the class. For instance, preparing to write papers, presentations, study for exams, things like that. So it's not just homework, it's all the work that goes into the class. And if you spread this out evenly throughout the term or throughout the semester or whatever, you will have less stress when it comes to, you know, the week or the day before your exam or your paper is due. Second thing I would say is decide if you're gonna do most things electronically or on paper. In college you have a lot more options as to, for instance, textbooks if you want to keep them electronically, or hard paper copy, paperback copy, not hard paper. Is there such a thing as hard paper copy? Anyways, paper copy. If you want to take your notes on your computer or in a notebook, a lot of professors let you decide that yourself. So I think making that decision for every single class individually, how you're going to keep track of like your papers and things like that, is very important. Personally, I prefer printing out things and having the ratings done on paper because I feel like I read a lot faster, I understand a lot better, it's a lot easier for me to go back. But for instance, I have some online classes, I'm not going to print out all that material, so I do, for instance, readings on my iPad and on my laptop. So just make sure you have that all figured out, because you want to keep at least most of your document in the same file format, either printed out or on paper, because it would be a lot easier when you need to look back at things, write paper, prepare for exams, etc. The number one thing everyone will tell you that's so obvious you don't even think about it is to go to lecture. And I'm serious about this one. A lot of people skip lecture, and that's the number one reason why people fail in college. That's real, you guys. That's real. If you don't show up to lecture, first of all, you're wasting money. Second of all, I'm sure you don't have that many other better things to do. Third of all, you miss out on so much material, the whole learning experience of being in that classroom setting, asking questions, interacting with the professor and other students, taking notes. Very often as well, the professor will say things that will be on the exam or that is expected that's not in the syllabus or in the book. Also, when you go to lecture, make sure you get the most out of it, so participate actively. Sit in the front, turn off your phone, make sure you're not distracted by other things, try to focus as much as you can on the lecture, what the professor is saying, ask questions if you don't understand, take good notes. If you struggle a lot with capturing what the professor is saying, ask them beforehand if it's okay for them if you tape record their lecture for your personal use. I did this somewhat last term in large or like heavy classes that I didn't necessarily understand all the concepts and all the vocab, or the concepts. Since I am an international student, it's sometimes very difficult for me when professors speak quickly to understand what they're saying. So I asked that. It was very helpful for certain subjects. If you know that you're very tired or that you might not understand or remember everything that's going on in lecture, it's great to have it so you can go back and like redo your notes with that. So just make sure you participate actively in the lectures you're actually in. A lot of people show up to lecture and then they sleep or they play on their phone, and that's not going to do you any good, other than maybe if the professor takes attendance, you will not lose points on that. So participate actively in lectures, and that's like 80% of the work you have to do. Going along with talking about the professor, make sure you introduce yourself. I do this every first day of lecture. I will go up to the professor, I will introduce myself by my name, maybe say why I'm interested in the class they're teaching, and make sure they can, that they are aware that my name and my face go together. So for instance, if I come up later and I have any questions or any issues or something about my exam or my paper, they will understand that it's coming from me, and it's just easier to communicate with your professor and have a better understanding of what's expected of you and what you can participate with if they know who you are. This is also great if you later need to ask for instance, letters of recommendation, or if you just need the professor, which is very often because professors, they have a lot of network, they have a lot of experience, they're great in their field, that's why they are allowed to teach it at a college level. So please just be nice and respectful for your professors, and they will most likely be nice and respectful back. On that note, make sure you go to office hours. This is a time a lot of professors have specifically for that class where you can come in and ask questions and talk about the subject or anything in general. I haven't done this too much because I haven't really struggled with a lot of subjects, but for the things I've done it with, it's just been so helpful. For instance, I would go to my TA for office hours before my exams, and it's been great because they know exactly what they expect to see on the exam. The professors know what they're going to ask, they know what they're looking for. So if you go in and ask, for instance, I know this, but is that as important as this? Or what sort of concept or what sort of structure do you want? Asking questions and talking them through, for instance, the study guide will help you so much. For instance, I was the only one who went to my TA's office hours in one of my philosophy classes last term, and I ended up with like the best exam results in the entire class. And this was a lecture of like 150 students, so it does help. I'm not just saying it, it actually makes a difference. Make sure you take advantage of academic resources you have all around campus and online. We, for instance, have a writing center where you can go and get help with either brainstorming or writing something. If you want someone to look through for grammar, if you have an essay and you want to make sure it's understandable for someone who hasn't taken the class, everything like that. We also have math tutors, we have study tables for different subjects. There are just an insane amount of academic resources, very often for free, on your college campus. And if you take advantage of those, I swear, it's going to help you so much. Like, there's no reason for you to fail in college if you do everything you can not to, if that makes sense. There are so many resources all around that's here to help you as a student, and you just need to take advantage of that, because they're not going to come to you, you need to come to them. Study what the professor says will be on the test or exam or whatever. It sounds so silly, but it actually makes a difference. When you do your homework, make sure you do your homework right. That is, read it actively, take notes from it, make sure you understand. If there's anything that's not very clear to you, write it down and go to office hours or ask in lecture what it is. Just reading through something, skimming through something, you're not going to learn anything from that. So make sure when you first sit down to actually study, do it properly. Going to lecture and doing your homework and doing both actively is what got me the grades. Like, really, I spent maybe like 3 extra hours studying for each exam before it happened. Everything else was the work I did as it was assigned. So it does make a difference. Make sure you either fill out your study guides or make one. So for almost every single class, the professor would give us study guides, either online or in paper form before the exams. Make sure you actually do those. This is what I said about study what the professor says will be on the exam. Make sure you know how to define the different words, how you can explain the different subjects, and perhaps more importantly, how all of these things tie and go together in real-life examples. If you're not sure what the tests or exams will be like, ask your professor. Is it multiple choice? Will it be mainly based on the book or lecture? Will it be short answer questions? How complicated will it be? How heavy do they count for your grade? Everything like that. Make sure you know exactly what your exam will look like before you walk in, and it will be a lot easier to study for it. Of course, make sure you start writing and study early on. What I'm trying to do this term is to put the deadline 2 days before the actual deadline. So for me, I will think something is due on Monday and not Wednesday, and that way, in case something happens, I still have those extra days to, change things or hand something in early, which is always highly appreciated. And then a week before my internally set deadline, I will start working on breaking it up. For instance, finding a topic, finding different things, finding different sources, reading the sources, mind mapping, everything like that. Keep a planner, make sure you write down in your planner all the due dates, all the homework you have done, what you're gonna do that specific day, everything like that. Because if you don't have a planner in college, you're gonna get lost.
You know, so take full responsibility for your own learning and your own academic success, and that's how you will be successful.
Make sure you take very good notes, both from lectures and your readings. Otherwise, you know, you will forget. You will forget almost everything that's going on. So take good notes of what's important. When you're done or when you come home, read through it and then try to read through it once more before you go to bed. I know this is so hard. I'm still working on this, but it does help a lot to read through it almost right after you finish the class and then later on. Because then you will revise the material, the more, you know, you will understand if there's something you don't understand, you will pick it up quite quickly instead of going to the end of the term then realizing you don't understand half the concepts at all. So just take good notes. Generally, during at least most classes and most lectures that's sort of more social science-y, not so much math and natural science and things like that, the most important concept would be what, how, and why, and these things are a lot more important than the when, where, who, you know? I know for me a lot of professors ask me to do either like article summaries or chapter summaries or responses or some sort of tests after doing the homework reading. Some professors don't, however, but I would still recommend that you do it. So if you read a long chapter for instance, sociology or political science, when you're done with that chapter, write down like 250 word summary for that chapter, something like that. Have it handy and use it later because you will need to use it for your exams and for your papers and things like that. And it's also a great way for you to revise the material, make sure you've understood everything, and if not, go back to your professor and ask. Read the syllabus in every subject. Every professor has a syllabus. They will either hand it out to you or you will have to print it out yourself, but make sure you read it in every subject. Highlight what's important, highlight due dates, highlight the criteria or the expectations, the grade boundaries for maintaining the different letter grades, the different, like what makes up the course. You get like 10% from doing your homework or participation or things like that. Just make sure you read everything and then ask questions, you know? It annoys me so much when people don't read the syllabus because almost everything is in there. What type of exam it will be, how much it will count for. If not, go and ask a professor, but make sure you read the syllabus first. I spent a lot of time researching different study methods, and there's a lot of things I don't think about, like how I necessarily study, that I sort of just developed over time. So I'll make sure to link a bunch of videos I watched that I found very helpful down below on how to study smarter, not harder, because there's a difference. You can spend 3 hours studying or 1 hour and you can learn the same depending on how you study. And I prefer the quick, dirty way. For certain classes, study groups or study partners is a great method of studying. Especially for classes that are heavy in concepts and not so much data and detail. So for instance, my philosophy class, it was great getting together with a group of ambitious students who were about the same level as me or above me, so I could sort of reach and gain some of their knowledge to talk about the different concepts, the different religions, how they all tie together, comparing them. Interpersonal communication, where there's a lot of concepts, and being able to sort of point out these different terms from a case study. Classes like that are great to have a study group if you're all ambitious, if you all know what to expect, and you all come in with about the same amount of knowledge about the issue, or class, or concept, or exam, you know. Usually I have a very specific idea of what I want to do and what I want to achieve when I sit down and study. This is usually for my to-do list. I write down like small boxes so I know exactly what to do, so I won't waste time trying to figure that out every single day. When I sit down and study, the first thing I do is I will do the homework. So usually there's a lot of reading, so I will make sure I read and simultaneously highlight and write notes, or I take notes on a separate piece of paper depending on if I'm planning on keeping or selling the book or not. Actively, you know, asking questions, trying to link it to other concepts I've understood before. And as I said, like actively engage in the material. If there's something that I can pick up, for instance, that this is a similar political system to the one we have in Norway, or this is something I'm not familiar with at all, this reminds me of a book, you know, different things like that. I'll make sure to write that down for future reference when I might not be as awake and active in the material when I'm just trying to revise it. Usually I have enough to do every single day, so I don't have any time wasted. However, if I've planned out like 3 hours to sit and work with something and I only spent 1 hour and I have 2 hours left, I will either move on to the next thing on my to-do list, or I will prepare for something that's coming up. For instance, I have a paper due in like 6 weeks in one of my subjects, but I know it will approach quickly. So then I will sit down and I'll start considering, you know, what do I want to write about? Is there any topic that comes to mind? Do I need to do initial research to figure out a topic, or do I want to just do some research to find possible sources for the topic? So there's always something to do, but how you do it and when you do it, that depends on you. When it comes to classes I have to write in, I sort of like overcome that getting started phase, so I'm very good at just sitting down and start writing immediately. That was like very stressful for me in the beginning, like in the IB I was not able to just do that. For that I would recommend setting a timer for instance 10 minutes, where your goal is to write as much as possible. It doesn't matter what you write, it doesn't matter how good it is, just write as much as possible because it gets you started. When you sit down to study, make sure your goal is to understand and remember what you read and what you do, and not just to get it done. Because that way you will save time because you don't have to go back and do so much work later on. Maybe the number one thing I've learned in college that's the most beneficial to me is that as soon as you stop considering things studying and consider it a learning experience, everything will change. Take classes you're interested in, because then you feel less like you're actually doing the dreadful like homework and amount of work and essay and reading and researching, and you feel like you're actually gaining something from it, that it is a great way to learn, a learning experience, because that's what it is. And I feel like I couldn't really do that until I got to college and was able to pick more of my classes myself, but it has changed the entire way I think about my education and studying and learning, and it's just amazing. The whole world just opens up and everything is just great. And it is a process, and it's something that needs to happen in your mind. It's not just what's actually happening, it's how you think about what's happening. So consider studying, learning, and things will change. So yeah, that's basically what I do when I study. It has gotten me this far, you know. I have a 3.93 GPA. I'm currently doing 20 credits, which is insane, but I mean, it works. I'm a bit sick now, I think that's why I'm so tired. So I need my coffee, I'm gonna go make lunch, and it's a good time. So yeah, make sure you watch the videos I've linked down below if you want more in-depth sort of how to study, why you should study like that, and sort of what I've done and understood to get to this point. If you have any further questions or want to see anything even more in detail, make sure you let me know. Yeah, I think that's a wrap, and I will make sure to talk to you guys later. Okay, take care, bye.